And we now are in a position where our progress rate for our boys in 2023 is plus 0.7, which is a vast improvement from 2018, as I said, where we're at minus 0.34.
My name is Laura Ellener, and I'm the head teacher of Chiswick School, which is a very large single academy trust made up of 1,600 children. 30% of our children are in receipt of the pupil premium. And 5 years ago, our school was a failing school. It had been graded as RRI by Ofsted. And we have worked over the 5 years that I have been head teacher to ensure that the school is at the heart of the community. And we're very pleased to say that we are a good school with outstanding personal development, and our progress results are in the top 10% of the country 2023, with our A-level results the best in the borough of Hounslow.
So I'm Graham McNamara, and I am one of the deputy head teachers here. And a lot of my work does revolve around our results and our curriculum, primarily with year 11 and year 13. So a lot of the work I do and around the team that I manage is around ensuring that students get the most out of school in terms of their results, and what goes in place along the way to make sure that that happens, and identifying areas that might need more support to make sure that we can give those areas support. We're very happy with the results and the improvement over the last few years, so showing that a lot of our different efforts are working.
Thank you. So how do you know that your school has closed the attainment gap for boys in particular?
So if we think back to 2019, which would have been, and even 2018, the last time that we had examinations that were carried out in the same way as this year, the progress that our boys made was significantly less compared to the girls. And if we think about 2018, our progress was around 0. So I think it was minus 0.03, so very close to 0, which would be the national average. However, our boys' progress was minus 0.3, so significantly less than those of girls, which were a lot higher. And throughout that time, we've had to make quite big improvements and fast improvements in the way that we think about our curriculum and making it relevant to our students. And that's been a really key turning point in what we are teaching them. Is, what case studies we bring in, is it relevant to our student context, looking at our teaching and learning policy and making sure it's consistent, but also is evidence-based in terms of we follow a 5-part lesson that allows students to frequently be tested upon their knowledge to make sure that we have regular intervals to check for understanding, import new knowledge, and check that they know what it means. And we now are in a position where our progress rate for our boys in 2023 is plus 0.7, which is a vast improvement from 2018, as I said, where we're at minus 0.34 for those. And that has been gradually getting better as school improvement does. It's not a very rapid fix. You think about even in 2022, when there were GCSEs, but students were given a bit more help in terms of pre-release material. Our boys had a progress rate of around 0.19. So it was positive, and it was, on the upward trajectory from where we were. But last year, we really pushed with our support of the students. And as I said, now we're at a point where it's plus 0.7. Where actually our girls are at plus 0.42. So there's a difference. It's completely flipped for them.
Okay, that's really interesting. So your boys have improved by nearly a whole grade per subject.
Yes.
I mean, that's remarkable, isn't it? So what did you do? What have you been doing which is significantly different from what you were doing before?
So if you kind of take a step back, as we said, if you look at 2019, we had to do a lot of curriculum work to make sure that it was relevant and that staff were thinking very carefully about what they taught the students and when and in what sequence. Now, obviously, we have to make sure that that complies around the national curriculum, but what elements of us contextually as Chiswick can we bring in to make sure that it's relevant to the students? So, for instance, if we take in history, for example. We developed our history curriculum to have a lot more understanding of migration, because where we are in London, would see a lot of families who migration would be a part of their history, so making it more relevant to them. We also then put a big key focus on developing expert teaching. So we worked with the Ambition Institute to look at how we plan our lessons, how we can make it consistent for students. So the flow of the lesson in a science lesson would be very similar to the flow of a lesson in a geography lesson. And we found the students really responded well to this consistency, because they knew when they started every lesson, it was silent, and they did 5 quick recall questions, which tested them on their previous knowledge. And they knew that when they were asked to end the lesson, that they would have what we call a RAG 1, 2, 3, which is a rating of how well I've done this lesson, but I'm answering this question for you to prove that. So that consistency was really key.
I think one of the other things that has been really important at school is a shift in the culture. So whereas before there was very poor behaviour, all of the children who were aspirational left us at year 11 to go to other sixth forms. And we've worked really hard as a school to ensure that the children understand the value of hard work. We have a character curriculum. We celebrate academic success. We have an elite sport programme that we do in collaboration with Brentford. And we have a boy, for example, who plays in our first team football team, and also is a singer in our choral group. And we will highlight that success to ensure that other boys see him as a role model, and ensure that all the children buy into our ambitious and proud motto, and see that they could be part of something that's really exciting, with big purpose, with big ambition, which drives their enthusiasm. And, you know, sickness is catching, and we make the sickness the need to achieve and do well and be proud. And that's sort of spread amongst the boys in the school, I would say.
And spread even more locally. You know, our A-level results in 2019 were the bottom in Hounslow, and for the second year in a row this year, they're the highest in Hounslow. So our sixth form is completely aspirational, and we use that aspiration to get into the sixth form as a real sense of a motivator for our students. They want to get a place here. They want to make sure that they stay here, because they know that the results that they see are something that they want to be part of when they are in sixth form. And we use our sixth form students as great ambassadors to get them there. So if we think about last year, one of our biggest impacting interventions was to partner a year 11 student who was underachieving with a year 12 student who had volunteered to tutor once a week. And they would tutor in a subject that they felt they were really strong at. And what they would do is we would partner them with somebody who was underperforming in year 11, and they would plan the session every week. So the teacher would give them some guidance on, you know, John is actually not really good at quadratic equations. Can you make sure you go over quadratic equations this week? Here's some links to some different resources you could use. And the year 12s would have to go away. They'd have to plan their tuition session. They'd have to come with their resources if they had to print anything. And they would then meet with the year 11 students and tutor them for the hour as volunteering. And we've rolled that out quite large this year with year 12, where they're expected to all give back an hour in some way, shape, or form to the school at least once a week. And that had the biggest impact. We had over 40 year 11 students take part in that last year, who had this one-to-one person to look up to, who could, whilst they were tutoring, talk about the trials and tribulations of year 11 that they went through and give them some advice, talk to them about what they're now doing in sixth form and what they plan to do afterwards. And this is just somebody who's only a year ahead of them, but, you know, has been through quite a bit and can give a lot of advice. And we've tried to start rolling that down lower in the school to make sure that we're catching that ambition quite early on. So, for instance, our biggest reading intervention in terms of impact is when we partner a year 7 who's really behind in their reading age, so way behind their chronological reading age, their chronological age from where they are. And when we partner them with a year 12 in the morning to do reading, that has had the biggest impact on their reading age and catching them up more than any program like Lexia or Michigan under that.
Okay, and have you you talked a little bit about male role models. Do you match the students up same sex, so the boys have got male tutors, or is a mixture?
No, it's a mixture.
Okay. And you mentioned about the literacy just now. I know that the statistics show that a lot of the underachievers in by 15 years old, they came in year 7 with poor literacy skills. Do you have specific interventions on that subject?
Yeah, we do. We begin every day with tutor reading. So year 7 will have a shared reading book, and we've chosen books that we know children won't necessarily pick up, a range of literature. And the tutor will read to the class. They each have a book and they follow the reading. And that happens every morning for the entire school, apart from year 11. We use reading tests, and we have 3 waves of intervention. Wave 1 is just making sure that teachers are talking to the students who identified as needing a bit of extra support within the classroom. Wave 2 will be guiding children through programs such as Lexia, which is an online reading program that the children can do on their own on the computer, with the paired reading that Graham mentioned. And wave 3 is those children who really come to secondary school not being able to read and have reading ages below 6 years old. And we use a phonics-based program. There are many programs available. The one we use is called Mishkin, Ruth Mishkin. And we go right back to basics. We also have employed and invested in a speech and language therapist, which is something I think not all schools have. We use our speech and language therapist, who's with us full time in school, to do one-to-one interventions with these children, but also to work with their teachers so that they really can focus on improving their literacy. And another thing that we did was we worked in collaboration with Voice 21, which is a group that supports schools with oracy. So we use the Jack Petchey Speak Out Challenge. We have Debate Mate. We have an amazing performing arts department, and lots of boys are involved in school productions, in concerts. And that all helps build confidence and agency, I think.
Okay, so you don't just stick to the academic route. I mean,
no, we are a really, really inclusive school, and we have an amazing enrichment program of our offer is really wide, to the academic clubs and classes, to rowing on the Thames, sports, singing, cookery, Latin.
And a lot of that is to develop a sense of belonging, because when the students develop a sense of belonging in their school, their attendance improves. And when their attendance improves, they're in front of that teacher a lot more, which then inevitably will improve their grades as well. So it's making sure we can get them in and feeling part of the school.
Okay, so what inspired you? What were your main sources of advice or research that you used, or maybe you thought of it all yourself?
So I often say I haven't had an original idea in my life, and I see what works in other schools, and I basically steal that and put it in our context. But obviously we look at other forms of research, and partnering with Ambition Institute was really helpful, because they brought the research to our school actually, and made it really relevant to everybody's practice, because I think sometimes it can feel that it's words on a page rather than actually being of use. And they were a great organisation that helped us do that.
Oh, interesting, yes. And how did you get the staff on board? Because clearly, if you're going to change the culture, you've got to have nearly everybody with you.
So that has been a real journey. And over the 5 years, we've asked staff to go above and beyond at Chiswick School. And they've always put their trust in us, and they've gone along with the things we've asked them to do, and they've worked incredibly hard. I think that we look after our staff. We think really carefully about how we can minimise their workload, which they appreciate. So we have centralised detention, so they don't do detentions. We set online homework, so they don't have to set or mark homework. We have a sensible marking policy. We have a 2-week half term. If they need to go to their cousin's wedding, we will make that happen. We really look after our teachers because we know that there are not many out there, and we want to keep them because they're absolutely amazing. And also, they are morally invested in supporting the young people in this school. And those that have been with us for 5 years and were here before are so proud that they have taken the school from a position where it was really failing to now being a really successful and wonderful place for children to go to school, and they're proud to work here, which is great, and well, they should be, I think.
Yeah, I think the successes of the school in the last few years has been very rewarding for them. And any new initiative that we put in place, we involve staff and we get staff feedback, and they're always very focused on what our school priorities are and how any new initiative would map towards that. So, for instance, we slightly altered our timetable this year. So we have a different start and end time to the day so that we could ensure the students were getting the most out of their school day, and that Key Stage 4 students could take part in enrichment. And staff were involved in that along the way, and were really reassured that their well-being and their workload was taken into account. So they now have 5 protected periods on their timetable in a week for planning, which is a lot higher than any school, well, most schools, I would say, in the country. And they really appreciate that, but also we get a lot back from that then as well.
But I think what I'm most proud of is we've done this while having to work within the framework of being a school that had no money 5 years ago. So we'd had to do things without a lot of money, and also punctuated by the pandemic. And I think the work we did in the pandemic really also set us up for the last 2 years. So we delivered live lessons straight away for the sixth form. Very early on, we started doing that for the rest of the school. We had about 80 children coming in every day to school from other schools coming to us. And I think the community and parents knew we were doing everything we could do to support them, delivering fridges, bikes, food, lots that loads of schools were doing as well. But I think that really helped them take us seriously.
Okay. And how do you afford to give your teachers 5 frees?
So we've got, in terms of our contact time, we've slightly changed our timing of the school day to be from 25 periods a week to 29. So we make sure that we have, in terms of our timetabling, that no one teaches a max of 22. And then it's just obviously a lot more than the 10%, but we carefully manage our budget to make sure that we can do that. We take, full advantage of anything that's offered to us, including the National Tutoring Programme, where we actually spent every single penny last year, in form of having an academic mentor for the students who we employed in the English and History department. We used staff delivering interventions. We also used the My Tutor programs, or the online tuition programs that were offered. And we also had different organizations and staff coming in on Saturdays on the lead up to exams to deliver them. So the budget is managed very carefully, and that can be seen by our improvement in our reserves, which is now just slightly above that 8% of our GAG. And it is done without jeopardizing any other department in the school.
We also have a really great PTA who run a car boot fair for us on the first Sunday of every month, and they raise tens of thousands of pounds for us, which supports us being able to do things that we probably wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So that's really helpful.
Okay, so have you, in order to go from 25 to 29, have you extended the school day then? Because the other thing you said was you've got this mentoring program where the year 12s are taking an hour. Where do they find the hour?
So we've slightly changed the timings of our school day to start 10 minutes earlier and to finish about 20 minutes later. But then we've also changed from 1 hour lessons to 6:50, so 5 1-hour lessons to 6 55-minute lessons.
Right.
And that allowed more time within the school day, which allowed for us to then run interventions like you mentioned there.
I think also another thing that's worth mentioning is our sixth form, the way our sixth form study is run. They have five lessons per subject, 6 lessons per subject. Five
per subject, 6 study.
Yeah, 5 lessons per subject, and then we timetable them 6 lessons in a study room where they work in silence on material that has been set by their teachers, a bit like prep, I suppose, at a private school, but that's timetabled within their day. And then we timetable them some periods when they can just be with their friends and play cards or talk. And that's had a real impact. And every 2 weeks, all their teachers have to put in a RAG rating for them, a progress rating. And if they don't get a good progress rating, when all the others go home on a Wednesday after lunch, they have to stay behind and do some extra work. And we have 400 in our sixth form now, whereas 5 years ago there were 70 in year 13 and the same in year 12. And we generally have a handful of students that have to stay behind. And things like that have really helped develop those study habits and
culture of working.
Yeah, culture of working hard. Because a lot of our children go home, they have to work, they have jobs because they don't come from very affluent backgrounds. We have a lot of bursary students. And so we're trying to work for our cohort rather than getting our cohort to work for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's one other key area I want to feed into in terms of the aspiration. We feed a lot into our alumni, and we have quite an extensive list of our alumni who've been to the school. And recently, in the last 2 years, they have let us know what they're doing, what they studied at sixth form at Chiswick, and what advice they would give to students. And they took a picture in the setting that they work in right now. And we've put that all over the school. So we have people who've graduated here in 2012 who are now working in animation for the Avengers movies, but they studied art, biology, and history here as their A-levels. And we've also had people who graduated in the 1980s. But the purpose of that exercise was for our students to see students who had been through the school just like them, but people who look like them, people who are from their area, people that they might know, who they see them succeeding in what they're doing. And that feeds into developing that culture of aspiration and ambition within the school.
Well, I think you're an inspiration. Thank you very much.
That's very nice.